Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is Jimo Olalekan, and myself and two other of my colleagues, will be handling case study this diet. You may have met Ashwaju before, possibly Mr. Ali. Okay, so the three of us will be handling the this paper. Uh, Fortunately, I'm the lead tutor for this paper as well. So the three of us will be handling the paper. Meanwhile, there are three things we want to look at. The broad outline is in three parts. The broad outline is in three parts, maybe four. Okay, let's say four. So we have the uh, um, we have the financial statement analysis part of the class, which has to do with ratio analysis. I mean, how we analyze financial statements. Okay, how we analyze financial statements, and we have the other part, which we call financial data analysis. That has to do with everything that you have learned under PM and SFM. I mean, project appraisal, contract evaluation, investment appraiser, and all that. Okay. Then we have the other part, which we call operational and strategic analytical scale or analysis. Okay. That part is where we look at the operations of the business, identify issues and whatever is wrong with it. Then the other part of that part is the that part where we make use of models to analyze the strategy of a business. Okay. Okay. So the fourth part is report writing. The fourth part is report writing, and that is where I come in. So the first two aspects I mentioned, the financial analysis, the financial statement analysis, and the financial data analysis. Mr. Ashiwaju will handle that. Maybe you have met him before. He's the one that is taking SFM. He's the one that is taking SFM, so we handle that part. Okay, we handle the financial statement and financial data analysis. Then Mr. Ali will handle the operational and strategic analysis. Then myself, I will handle the report writing aspect of the case. I mean, of this paper. Okay. So under the report writing aspect, it means that because the truth is, the whole essence of this class is for you to learn how to write report. Fine, you will be given a case. You will be provided with a case. You analyze the case, you identify the issues. Okay. At the end of the day, you have to communicate this to your audience, maybe your client or employer in the case study exam. How do you do that? You do that through reports. So, hello?
Mm.
Is someone trying to ask a question? Hello? Is anyone trying to ask a question? Akoli, can you please mute your mic? Akoli. All right. Why Akoli is doing that? Thank you for doing that. Okay, so I'll be under the report writing. There are a couple of things that we are going to do there. We are going to look at the general idea about case study, what case study entails, the general idea. After considering that, then we go deep into. Hello?
Hello, sir.
Sorry, my network just went off.
Okay.
Hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
And can you see my screen?
No, we cannot see your screen yet.
Okay, let me share it again. Okay, can you see the screen again? So,
Yes.
as I was saying, I said that under the report writing, then we look at the basic introduction, then we look at introduction to ICANN case study itself, because case study is different from every other case studies that you may have seen before or you will see later on. And under that, we consider how the case study exam is being assessed, the assessment process, the skills that you need for case study. We look at those. And we also consider the idea behind executive summary. What is the purpose of executive summary? Then we also look at how to handle the two requirements in the exam and the analytical skills to be tested in the exam. We look at those two. Then we end by looking at step by step in report writing. Look at the steps you can follow to write report. And we look at May 20 November 2019 diet, the case in November 2019 and the case in March July 2020. We consider those two cases. However, my other colleagues, Mr. Shiwaju, will look at three different cases with you. He will solve three different cases with you. Mr. Ali will solve two different cases with you. That's about seven different cases. And we also give you the report. And the reason is that, part of the process for writing case study exam.
Yes, sir. We
We can
can
hear
hear you.
you, sir.
All
Yes.
right. So you will have to bear with me. I'm sure you all know that the situation of electricity in this country, there is no electricity anywhere, and there is no fuel. So I have to find every means. So it might be a bit noisy at the background. So we just have to manage, at least for today, please. Okay? Okay, are you with me? All right. Right. So for today, we'll be looking at the introduction and meaning of case study. I mean, before this class, I'm sure you would have asked yourself, what is case study? What is a case? What is a case study? Why case study? You may be asking that question, you know, and and God forbid, I mean, in this exam, for someone to ask you define case study. No, nobody will ever ask you that question. Nobody. Nobody. Now, a case is a scenario. Okay, before that, I think I will have to tell you that there are two major methods of teaching. There are two major methods of teaching. Now, the one you are familiar with is the normal one you see, whereby your lecturer will come to the class, come as, you know, stand in front of the class, talk about a particular topic, dictate the notes, then give you some materials to read and ask you some questions, whether short answer questions or fill in the gap or theoretical questions. That is the lecturing method of teaching. And that teaching is also called the sage on stage, the sage on stage rather, the sage on stage, which means that is a method of teaching whereby an expert, a professor, comes to the classroom and tell you everything he or she knows about that particular subject, be it theories, maybe we could talk about theories, we could talk about frameworks, we could talk about principles, we could talk about ideas that are backed by facts and figures. Maybe theory has proven those facts. Okay, okay, that is the lecturing method of teaching. However, the other method of teaching has also been in use for a very long time. And that method of teaching is what is being used in the medical school. You see, in the medical school, what you will see is that um, after the medical student being taken through the theoretical aspects of their academics, what they also do is they take them through the uh, clinical training. Now, in the clinical training, what they normally do is that they assign these students to a medical doctor, which will start who will start taking these students, you know, the medical doctor is one that will start training the students in the medical facility. So he takes them around. Show them things, how things are being done. Now, I can also tell you that another way you will look at it is, you know, during before they get to the clinical training. I mean, even after the clinical training, they will still go for housemanship. They will do some other trainings before they can be certified as a medical doctor, and they can start to practice. Maybe they have their private practice or they join a public practice. Now, I'm also aware that right from their 200 level, because I had a medical student as a roommate when I was an undergraduate, right? And what I noticed was that in the class they discuss a particular theory. The lecturer comes, teach them a particular theory, and after that they take them to the lab. In the lab they group them into groups, different groups, and each group will be presented with a cadaver. A cadaver is a dead body given by the federal government to schools. Okay, so once they let's take for example in the classroom, they look at the theory of the human brain. So after the theory, they take them to the lab. In the lab, they will ask them to open up the cadaver, the brain of the cadaver, and they will ask them to look at each and every part of the cadaver brain that they have discussed theoretically in the class. Them to practice the the relevant theories, models, and tools that they have learned during their studies. Okay, so what I can say is that, you know, the case study method of teaching is now being introduced to the management student, to accounting student, because the process of training accountant, although we can also argue that fine, before you graduate you have to go to the firm, you have to be attached to a firm to learn the accounting skill. That is correct. But before you even get to that stage, what what are the things put in place to bridge to bridge to close the gap between the theoretical knowledge and the practical knowledge? And that is the essence of case study. That is what the case study want to fill in into. So just like I've said, a case is a scenario that presents management student with a chance to identify business related problems by applying relevant theories, models, and analytical tools. Okay, and the idea is that management students are being taught to become business advisors. So, because for instance, when you qualify, you also become a business advisor. You could function as a financial management advisor, where you help in management of business finances. You could do planning, financial planning, budgeting, budgeting, and forecasting. You could function in this area. But how can you do this if you have not been taught, if you have not gone through the if you have not gone through the practice, if you have not shown what you are to do? So again, a case can be fictional or real life. A case can be fictional or real life situation. And what you will see is that someone can come up with, based on experience, and can write up a case, a business case that will present possible challenges, possible challenges that possible challenges that businesses face in the course of running their business, or business owners face in the course of running their business. Okay, that is a part of it. The other one is that cases can be real life. Cases can be real life. So in NICAN study exam, for example, real life scenarios have been tested, and they will continue to test it. Now, I could remember in May 2017, before May 2017, around around 2015, 2016, if you could remember, there was this global incident of Samsung phones exploding all over the world. I mean, you can Google it. You can Google it. BBC, all the major international network organization reported the case. Even here in Nigeria, we had the experience of explosions here and there. In May 2017, ICANN tested exactly that scenario. They call it Jaga Jaga Technologies. ICANN tested that scenario. Exactly that scenario. They tested it. In in 2020, in 2020, we were even supposed to write three diet exams. We were supposed to write in March, July, and November. We were already done with the lecture. In fact, we have been given the pre-scene. We had our pre-scene. We have done everything. We were already ready. We were ready for the exam. We were set for the exam that time before the lockdown started, and I had to suspend the exam. That initial case was nothing close to whatever pandemic situation. But by the time we were to write the exam in May, in July 2020, I can tested I can tested another case, a pandemic scenario, and they called the case Chartered Institute of Business Advisor. Was what they tested in that diet. So what I'm trying to say is that a case is actually a real life scenario. Most of the cases are real life scenario. We have also seen cases whereby by the time our students start, making research, they were able to discover that those companies are actually in existence. I can even tell you some other cases in we have heard about in written in ICAEW and some other uh, professional uh, institutions. You know, they are real life cases. They are real life cases. So a case is a scenario that present management students with the chance to identify business related problems, thereby applying their knowledge of theories, models, frameworks, and analytical tools in order to find solution to the problem and communicate their findings to the users, including their recommendations to the users. Okay, so we know what a case is. We know what a case is. So, what are the properties of cases? What are the properties of cases? What are the properties of cases? A case could contain information that include noise, irrelevancies, dead ends, and false information, right? Because there is need for the examiner to give you so much information that will be useful for you in your analysis. Unfortunately, some information will end up not being useful. We could have information about about a particular scenario that might not be relevant to the actual issues, but might be relevant to the industry at large. Maybe the insecurity issue, for example, the insecurity issue, for example, might actually not be related to the issues in the case, but they want you to know that the insecurity is affecting the value chain in the production process. It's affecting the value chain in the production process. Okay, so they give you. So there could be irrelevancies in the case. There could be information that are biased or that are limited. On the other hand, we could have unstated information that you might have to infer. For example, you might not be given information about the problems a particular company is experiencing presently. But if you can determine the life cycle, if you can determine the life cycle of the business, if you can determine the life cycle of the business, you can use that to infer the possible situation, the possible issues the business might be going through in that particular time. And the other character you have to know about a case is that it is always not linear in nature. It is always not linear in nature. What does that mean? It means that cases cases are not presented in such a way your textbooks, newspapers, your novel, your 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 other books are presented, storybooks. In other words, you could have information, you could have part of one information in, say, exhibit 1, and the remaining part will be spread across the whole of the case, or maybe in the last exhibit or the last document. So the information will be spread across. And as such, one major challenge case study students will have is that they will find it very, very difficult to understand the story behind the case. You know, because it is not logical. It will not be presented in a logical manner. If you pick your SFM textbook, for instance, the first, if you read, if you go through the first chapter, the second chapter will build on the first chapter, the third chapter will build on the second chapter, and it will continue like that. You continue progressing like that. And if you can start like that, it makes a lot of sense. You read and you understand. If you pick a newspaper, if you pick a story in a newspaper and you read it, you quickly understand the story, right? But cases are not like that. They are not presented, or they are not written in a logical way. They are not linear in nature. Okay, so a well-written case, we usually have these characters, we have these traits. Okay, so and as such, what you will need to do is that your job will be that you will have to identify the key issues in the case, construct your conclusions, and make recommendations. After you must have analyzed your issues, those issues you must have analyzed them, then you make your conclusions and your recommendation. Your job is also to filter out irrelevant information. Work with the relevant ones, with the relevant data, with the appropriate data. Then you might have to furnish missing information by through inferences. Just like I said, Once you know the life cycle of the business, you can interpret the performance of the business based on the on the on the possible issues that business will be facing in that life cycle. Then you have to bring evidence. You have to bring evidence from every part of the case. You have to use evidence in the case, right in the case, for you to support your analysis, so that your analysis will become a logical one. I mean, if you are presented with the financial statement of the organization, so whatever analysis you are doing should be backed by the ratios that you have computed. Whatever analysis you are doing should be backed by the project information, project data that you have been given, the industry information that you have been given. And lastly, your job will be that you should write a well structured report. You will write a well structured report. And this is the first time I will mention this, because 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 there is a way you must write your report. There is a way you must present your report in such a way that it will meet the standard required. Okay, so let's look at three ways. Let's look at three ways. Let's look at three ways by which you can read cases effectively. Three ways by which you can use cases effectively. The first one is when you skim for an overview, because it will be very difficult to understand it, right? So you have to devise a particular way, a particular method of reading, so that you can comprehend the case. And you know, if there is no if you fail to comprehend the case, if you fail to understand the case scenario, it will be very, very difficult for you to understand the case. So let me give you an example. So your friend comes to you that he or she wants to discuss a particular issue in the office with you. Meanwhile, your friend is such a friend that talks very fast. After narrating the story, you are unable to understand it. Do you think you will be able to make contribution to the story? No, because you have an issue, you did not even understand the case to start with. So there is no way you can make meaningful contribution or suggestion or opinion to the case. That means you cannot even advise your friend on what to do or how to go about it. So the first thing you have to learn is to skim for an overview. Once you get the case, you can go through it very quickly, but make sure you are noting headings and subheadings, critical points, maybe some points that are being highlighted. Now, what you are trying to do is that you are trying to have a feel of the structure by which the case is being presented. Then the next thing is that you can then start to read actively. You read actively and you take notes. So you can read the exhibit of the case one after the other and you take note. Let's say you read exhibit one. After reading the exhibit one, you take note. You take note of the main point they made in that exhibit. You take good note of it. Okay? You take note of it. So the third way by which you can read the case is the notes you have taken. You can now take your time to think about it, to reflect on it. Now the reflection could come in form of, okay, we are told that the business is a startup business, it's just starting up. Then you can reflect that, okay, if it's just starting up, it means it's just new to the industry. It's just introducing the product to the industry. And the customers and the business may not have many customers at that time. And as such, the sales might be low. And if the sales is low, from because demand is low, the product and the business is not well known. Demand is low, sales is low. The business will likely be making loss because 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 the business must have incurred startup cost. Meanwhile, the sales has not covered the it's not enough to cover the startup cost, so it will be running at a loss at that time, right? So this process you use it to reflect so that you gain more understanding about the case. So these are the three ways by which you can use to read any case. This is we are talking about the general idea of what a case is or what case study is. Okay. Then we can also look at we can also look at okay, I've talked about how to read a case, right? And the other thing you need to know about how to read a case is that when you are reading a case, you have to put yourself in the position of the scenario, of the issue in the scenario. Let's take, for example, that the case is about marketing, or the case is about oil and gas. So you have to position yourself as someone who is functioning in that particular industry or who is working in that industry. You have to think about yourself as though you are in real life. You are in real life working in that industry, functioning in that industry. So by doing that, it will also help you to understand the case very well. So that is just an addition to the method of reading a case. And I've said that understanding a case is the starting point of a case analysis. So you have to understand the scenario. There is nothing you can do about it. There is nothing you can do about it. And again, let me tell you, I mean, this is a warning. You have to know that one of the major one of the major challenges you will face in this paper is about reading and comprehending cases. However, there's a way we will do it in the class. There is a way we do it, and I believe that after doing it, I mean, we read two cases in the class. We read it, and we will take our time. We will take our time to read exhibit one. This is how we normally do. We read exhibit one, then we discuss. We discuss it. I allow you to make your contribution. By doing that, you see that after making that contribution, you would have understood what we have read in that part of the case. Okay, so understanding a case is the is where you start your analysis of any case study scenario. Okay, then um um you think and not read is essential to understanding a case. Just like I said, you do more of thinking. And again, let me tell you that in this class, this is where you will learn to think, because before you can write, you have to think. And that is why you see that um plagiarism that is why plagiarism is a very big offense in the academics, because it has to do with intellectual property. Research reports have to do with intellectual property. The person that has written that research must have gone through a very serious process of thinking, critical thinking, before coming up with the report. So you have to be able to think. You have to be able to think in order for you to understand cases. Okay, you have to be able to think in order for you to understand cases. Now let's look at what is your role, or what are the roles that you will play as an analyst in a case. What role are you expected to play as an analyst in a case study exam? The first role is that your role will be to identify the major issues in the case. The major issues in the case. Now, it could be that, and when I say major issue, because there'll be lots of issues in cases. There'll be lots of issues. We could have issue of we could have financial distress, whereby maybe the business has taken so much debt and is finding it difficult to repay. there could be liquidity issue, there could be supply chain issue. Okay, there could be lots of those issues, economic issues, and how it's affecting the business, just like we are seeing presently. So your job will be to identify the critical problem. And how do you do that? You do that by focusing on the requirements of the case. What is the requirement? The question being asked. Because cases will come as if that someone, somewhere, maybe your client, maybe your employer, is asking you to do an analysis and consider certain issues. Those issues that the client or the employer is asking you to consider are the requirement. He may ask you to look at the performance of the business over the years. How is the business performing? There's issue of liquidity. You know, the business is profitable, but there is no cash in the business. That is possible working capital issue or liquidity issue. There could be issue of decision making whereby they are considering maybe 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 acquiring another business or starting a new business in another location or diversifying their products or investing in a property, plant and equipment or machine. Okay, so your job will now be to identify what are those issues. Why is it that there is no cash despite the fact that the business is making profit? Then you can start to consider the possible ratios that you need to do that. You know, maybe you want to look at the efficiency ratios. You know, the payable days, the receivable days, the inventory days, the turnover day rates, and all that. Okay, maybe you also want to look at the liquidity ratios, the current ratio, and any other ratio that will help you to identify the reason for the lack of cash in the business. So there was a time a client called and said that, okay, I was to present the report, a report to the business, and and the business owner now said that, accountant, thank you, you have done a good job. Oh, see this your report, fine, you have done well. But in this your report now, in this your report, accountant, it shows that we have been making profit for we have been making profits in this business. But accountant, as I'm talking to you now, if you open our bank account, there is no money there. So where is the money? Where is this profit you people are talking about? You know, as an experienced person, I already knew where the cash, was as at that time. So I told the madam that, Madam, can I go, Madam, can I go around and see what you have in your store and in the business? Can I go around and see those things? Okay, can I go around and see those things? So she took me to the store. So as I was checking the store, I saw some packaging materials, some raw materials, milk and all that. And I saw big freezers, about two or three of those big deep freezers. So I saw those freezers and I asked Madam, can I check this freezer? The madam said, you can check now, counter. As I opened the freezer, I saw the freezer with fruit juices, The business sell fruit and make juices from it too. I saw about two big freezers with juices. And I said, Madam, oh yeah, let's go and see that now. I've seen your money. Oh. And I told her that, Madam, you see the cash, the money you are looking for is what you have in that store. Now, Madam, imagine that if you are able to do sales and you sell everything in that freezer, what will happen? She said, that's true, accountant, that's true. That is where the cash is. Now that's our cash. I now told her that this is what you will do. You have to do sales. You have to run advert. Okay, so I gave her everything she done. And ever since then, the cash flow of the business has improved. So you have to be able to identify what is the reason for the issue in the business, why they are raising that issue, why they are commissioning a research or an analysis, why they ask you to do that analysis. You have to identify those issues. Then you have to put the issue in a particular context. Maybe you have to use a particular theory to maybe you have to use a particular theory you have to use a particular theory to analyze the issue the issue. Then you can, for instance, you can the you might need to maybe use a model. So the case might need you to use a business model like SWOT model, maybe PESTEL model, maybe value chain model, maybe Porter's five forces model to identify the issue. So you have to be able to use the right theory, framework, principle to identify the issue, to analyze it. Then you have to be able to compare alternative solutions. You have to be able to compare alternative solutions. For instance, if you have looked at maybe you have given a particular solution and you have another solution, you have to be able to compare which one is the best. Maybe you have to appraise a project and you have used the NPV method and the payback period method. So you have to consider these two methods and see the result. Okay, so which one is the best? Then you pick the best out of the two alternative solutions that you have given. Then you also consider the advantages and disadvantages of this possible solution. Then select the best solution and make the relevant recommendation. And lastly, you have to write up your case analysis in a proper report format. In a proper report format. And this is the second time. Because at the end of the day, you see that there is a way you must write your report in the exam. There's a way you must write your report in the exam. And just like what I told our students in our centers, in our physical center, I said that report writing is the major thing in this class. And it's skill based. It's skill based because you must learn to do it before you get it. You must learn to do it before you understand it. So what that means is that you have to practice it. Fine, you will be taught how to do it. You'll be shown how to do it. We will give you about 7 different reports to go and study. You have to study those reports. Okay? Study them. And the last thing is you have to now start writing yourself. And let me tell you now that writing report is not very easy. Just think about research. And it's not very easy to teach because you know research in the academics. What you will see is that they will tell you that you have research 401 or project 40 something. Okay, and you'll be assigned a supervisor. The supervisor will never teach you anything pertaining to research. Maybe they can say research methodology. What will they do in research methodology? They will just teach you some theoretical things. And what's the next thing? What's the next thing you will do? What's the next thing you will do? They will not ask you, your supervisor will then ask you, say, okay, oh yeah, go and bring chapter 1 to 3. Then you go yourself. You learn how to write chapter 1. You learn how to write chapter 2. You learn how to write chapter 3. And we check and ask you to make correction. Okay? It is not as easy as you might think. And as such, it might be a very tasky thing to learn. As a matter of fact, you will likely find it very difficult to write. So you have to push yourself so much. And what I told them in the class is that any student that refuse to write report, at least 2 reports before the exam, will never be considered as my own student or as our students in the case study team, because there's no point. And what that means is that your first practice What you have just said, if you refuse to write report, is that you eventually write it, you eventually practice it, but the one you will practice is the exam proper. It means it is on the exam day that you start practicing report writing, which is very risky for the success of the exam. So at a time, I will invite the directors to come to talk to the class, because from experience, we have faced this as a challenge over and over again. Students will find it difficult to write report. They will not want to write it. So I will call them to come and talk to you. I will call everybody to come and talk to you. It's a must that you write one or two reports before the exam. So what makes a good case analysis? What are the things that makes a good case analysis? The first thing is that you must have clearly identified the core or relevant problems in the case. The core or relevant problem. What are the core or relevant problems? The core relevant are the problems that has to do with the requirement. What do they ask you to do in the case? Those are the issues. So once you identify them, those are the core or critical problems. You must be able to identify them. Just like the example I gave about our clients, then you must be able to analyze those issues that underline this problem. What are the reasons for these issues? Liquidity issue. What are the reasons? What are the reasons? High inventory. There's high inventory, low turnover. That means the turnover is low. Okay, okay, poor sales. Okay, so you have to know what are the reasons, what are the causes of this issue. Then use appropriate terminology. Then present feasible and complementary recommendations. So you will, at the end of the day, you will make recommendation. That is where you advise the business on what to do about the issues that you have identified. Now, these issues, so because the because the case is a real life scenario, and as such your recommendations have to be feasible, have to be implementable. Just take for example, when the madam said okay, okay, when I was able to identify that, the inventory is high in the business, and I now tell them that, madam, oya sell the inventory now, sell the inventory now. Is that a feasible advice? It's not implementable. How would they sell it? If they know that they should sell it, they would have sold it. There's no need of asking me now. Yes, I had to tell them that. I had to advise them that this is what you will do. Now, most of your customers, you can even find them online. You are selling in the heart of the island in Lekki. So you have to do some Facebook advert, Instagram advert, to target everybody in that vicinity. You target them. This is a very implementable recommendation or advice. What I'm saying is, whatever advice you are giving should be implementable, should be feasible, should be realistic, should be realistic. That is these are the things that makes a good case analysis. Then, then, then the following are what a detailed analysis should entail. I mean, when you are saying you are doing a very good analysis, case analysis, it should include the following. One, you must investigate and analyze the company's history and growth. You must investigate and analyze the company's history and growth. And by investigate and by implication, that means you are equally looking at the life cycle of the business. I've talked about that. And again, the first thing is, in doing any investigation, in doing any analysis, is to understand the business. Just like in audit, before you do any audit, you have to understand the business. So, so there was this the a couple of years back. I was to go for a tax audit. Uh, I went for a tax audit, and that business is a maritime business. In the maritime business, these are the some of them. This particular business helps the vessel owner. All these large ships, vessels that carry crude oil and all that, and some that travel on the waters, on the big water. You know, so the company will help them to recruit seafarers on the vessel. So the business process is that every money, every money, every money spent by these seafarers, including their salaries and wages and commission and everything, is the company that will foot it. At the end of the month, then we make invoice. So after making invoice, it means that the company is just collecting back his money. So the company will just add a little percent, I think about 5% or 10% as management fee. Okay, and that management fee is the revenue of the company. So when the tax auditors came, we gave them our own revenue and the tax liability. So one of the requirements is they will request for your bank statement. So they took the bank statement away. When they came back with 50 million tax liability, and we were saying we had about 5 million or thereabout. They came with 50 million. We now said, no, where did you get 50 million? They now said, didn't you people see that your the credit side of your bank statement, the inflows? Can't you see the inflows? No, we now said, no, 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 that is wrong. So we had to call them for a meeting. We presented them with our invoices, and we had to explain the business process to them. Said that no, this is how the business make money. It is only the management fee on the invoice that is our money now. We are the one that pay all these things. So they are just refunding us. So that was when they now agreed with us that okay, okay, that's true and all that. And we just have to pay 5 million instead of 50 million. Okay, so you have to understand the business, the company's history, growth, business operation, business process, in order for you to get an idea of what the business is doing and the stage it is in its growth process. This will give you an idea of the possible issues that the business will likely be going through at that stage. Then you have to identify the strengths and weaknesses of the business. The strengths and weaknesses are the internal factors that gives the business competitive advantage. In some other time, when you are doing a financial statement analysis, the positive ratios are the strengths in the business, while the negative ratios are the weaknesses in the business. It means that does not mean that when you are asked to do look for strengths and weaknesses, that you are doing SWOT analysis. Okay, you understand that later. Then you also have to consider information in the external environment, right? Because those things that are happening in the external environment, we usually have direct impact on the business. Look at the supply chain disruption that we have due to the insecurity in the country. The farmers cannot even go to the farm again. And because they cannot go to the farm again, these raw materials that restaurants and some other businesses use for their own product, they can't get it. Okay, and it's causing a lot of issues for them. It's causing a lot of issues. So you have to gather information in the external environment in order for you to know how they impact on the business. Their impact on the business will also help you to be able to identify the issues that the business is going through at the moment. Then you have to conduct detailed financial statements and financial data analysis. Financial statement analysis is when you consider the analysis of the financial statement by using ratios, trend analysis, and all that. And financial data analysis is where you have to do appraisal of projects, you know, where you make use of every other data that you cannot find on the financial statement, like costing information, project information, investment data, you know, so that is you also consider this information, financial statement of financial data analysis. Then you analyze your findings. Okay, so you have to interpret your finding. What is the figure that you have computed? What is it saying? Ask yourself, what is it saying? Why is this figure what it is? What caused this figure to be what it is? You analyze your findings. Then you conclude and you make recommendations. You conclude and make recommendations. And conclusion along the line in this class, you will get to know that conclusions and recommendations takes about 16 marks in this exam. You have to conclude and make recommendation. It takes about 16 marks. You will see along the line in this exam. Now, what are those factors that usually distinguish successful students in case study exam? The first one is good planning, good planning and strict time management. Good planning and strict time management. Now, it will interest you to know that one of the differentiators between case study and other ICANN papers is that the time is different. It is only case study exam that you have a whole 4 hours to write. Every other paper you only have 3 hours. But case study 4 hours. Unfortunately, these 4 hours will never be enough for you. And as such, you have to plan yourself. You have to plan yourself. You have to devise a plan that you will use to solve the exam. And this plan must have been practiced. And that is me re-emphasizing again that you must practice report writing very well if you really plan to pass this exam. I mean, there's no two ways about it. There's no shortcut. No, there's no shortcut. There's no shortcut. So you must practice. So by doing that, you would have gotten an idea of how to manage your time. You'd have practiced and how to do the suggestion. The suggestion is that you use maximum of 1 hour for reading and planning. Whatever you want to read and plan, 1 hour. Should not be 1 hour. That means you spend about 30 minutes on overall reading and maybe 30 minutes on breaking down the requirements. Okay, so that you can understand the requirements. So that until when you understand the requirements is when you can know what to do, what computation to do, what ratio to do, whether to use MPV or IIR or whatever, maybe contribution analysis or whatever method you should use to appraise the project. It is until when you do that. So your computations should not be 30 minutes. 30 minutes for computation for requirement 1, 30 minutes for computation for requirement 2. Then 2 hours for writing your report, which means 1 hour for writing report on requirement 1, 1 hour for writing report on requirement 2. Don't worry, I will show you all of these things later on. Then good quality written financial statement analysis and good quality financial data analysis. Just like I've said, you have to analyze the financial statement of the company by doing ratio analysis. Then the financial data by doing project appraisal, which this is me now telling you that, just like I said when I started this class, that is why your lecturer, your SFM lecturer will come in so that he can do a revision on some of these SFM topics and PM topics that you have learned in the past. Okay. Then good quality appendices. Appendix is where you do your computations. It is meant to be outside the body of the report. I mean, at the last page of the report. So you have to produce a quality appendices. Quality appendices. I mean, you present it very neat so that anybody that is looking at your appendix will be able to follow through your computations. Not the kind of computation that someone will be looking for your figures. How do you derive this figure and all that? No. It must be logically presented. It must be well arranged. Okay? Then you do your analysis through the what? Through the computations that you have done. Okay, you interpret your computations. Okay, and you form your own judgment. What do you think? What do you think about what you have done, or what you are looking at in your computation? What can you say about it? That is your judgment. What can you say about it? Then what do you say? What is your conclusion? Is the business profitable or not? What is your conclusion? Should they go ahead with the investment or not? What is your conclusion? Is the business making profit or not? Is the business growing or not? Okay, so you have to make your conclusion. Then, then, then you have to reference appropriate economic factors. You have to reference appropriate economic factors, including some ethical issues in the business. You have to consider them. I mean, economic factors are those issues that we are experiencing in the Nigeria economy, for instance. The removal of fuel subsidy, how it is affecting the business now. The removal of fuel subsidy, the recently we were told that there's another policy that the removal of tariffs on food items, removal of tariffs on 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 pharmaceutical items, right? Right. All of these things will have impact. So after the news came out that there is now removal of tariffs on food items, people can now import food items. The next day, I had the association of this association of farmers in the country. They now issued a statement that you see the gains that we have made over the years about food production now. This policy we throw it into the lagoon, because they already know once the border is open, once the tariff is open, people can now start to import. Now the other policy was to encourage local production of our food so that we can feed ourselves. That was Buhari's regime. But what we noticed was that these items that we are producing locally is more expensive than the foreign ones. It's more expensive. They now see that once the foreign ones are brought in, they will compete with the local ones, and they won't be able to make profit again. So you have to also consider the economic and industrial factors, including ethical factors. What are those things that the business is not doing right? Are they involved in fraud, bribery, or things that will damage their reputation? You know, you have to consider those things too. You also have to show your demonstrate professional skepticism. You know, you know you know the financial statement presented to you, is it audited? If not, you have to doubt the information. It means it could contain errors and misstatements because it's not audited. The costing information given to you, who prepared the costing data, who prepared the budget you are asked to use? Is the person a chartered accountant? What is the experience of the person? What is the level of knowledge of the person? Because if the data is wrong, whatever analysis you are doing is wrong, right? Right? Then you make necessary assumptions. There's room for you to make assumptions too, but you must state it. Let the examiner or the assessor know that this is the assumption that you have made. Okay? Then then you proofread your work and you write a well structured report in appropriate format. So these are the things that you need to do, or these are the things that usually distinguish the successful case study student from the unsuccessful ones. Now, what are those things that you need to do to be successful in case study exam? What are those things? The first one is that you must be able to understand the business situation, the current business situation. Where is it in its life cycle? Is it a startup business? Is it a business How can you tell me you don't understand the requirements in the case? I was now thinking about it. I even called my wife. Hear what these students said, though. But I have to think about it. So I now realized that. So he could not settle down to read and understand the second requirement and thereby getting to, to do anything on it. So I now said that by that time, I've not seen his result too. So in the class last week, I now told them that student, I'm very sure he cannot score, more than 55 in that exam. Guess what? Guess what? The guy, the student scored just 50 because he answered just one requirement. Later on, I will show you the reason why you have to answer the two requirements. I will show you the results. So I will share it with you. I will share it with you too. Right? Then the skills and competencies needed is what you must have prepared over the weeks, over months. You must have practiced it months before that exam. I mean months before that exam. You must have practiced. You must have known the approach you will use. It's not in the exam that you now be saying, let me do this, let me do this, let me do it. You must have known, you must have practiced very well that you are following 10 steps. 10 steps, and you must follow through these 10 steps. Please, I'm shouting now, I'm stressing it with you and all that. Right? So many things. And if those things have these things that I've told you, if this whatever they do, Pale know that you is wrong. You should know. Okay. So again, it is essential that you know that this process is what you must practice before the exam. Don't go and practice anything anyhow in the exam. If you do that, your chance of passing this exam will reduce from 50 to about 20%. Okay, please and please and please and please, I'm begging you. So how do you deal with case study material in the exam? How are you supposed to work with case study material in the exam? you know the first thing is to study and analyze the present before the exam. So about a week or 2 weeks before the exam, present will come. And what do we call present? Present is more like when we have the whole case story is 100%, but before the exam, the present will come, which is about 30% or 40% of the case story, without the requirement, no requirement, I mean no question with it. So they give us so that we can familiarize ourselves with the with the case, with the complaint, in the industry it's operating, the financial statement, of the organization. So we will have that time to analyze the financial statement, to look at the industry, to we also have that time to understand that information. Then we can begin to project the possible direction that the case could go. All right, we could project the possible direction the case could go by doing so. So we have the pricing. Pricing is very important. We have it, and we take our time to analyze it. Then you should. The good thing is for you to always start by 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 reading the requirement. You read the requirement. What is the requirement saying? What is it asking you to do? So if you read the requirements, it will also help you in understanding the case, because you already know the key thing to be looking for. The requirements will be stating clearly the key thing that you have to do, you have to be looking for in the case. Then you have to read rapidly through the entire case, just like skimming through the case. Then you come again to read the requirement. At this time, you are breaking down the two requirements separately into their constituent parts. You break it down. Now, by breaking it down, once you break it down, it will show you clearly the form of computation you have to do. It will show you very clearly the form of computation that you have to do. Then the next thing is to read the exhibit one by one, and this one we'll practice it in the class, how to read exhibit one after the other. And you take note of key facts and figures and key information in each of the exhibit. Then You also read your numerical exhibit. What are your numerical exhibit? The financial statement and some other financial data given to you. And as such, you will learn that it is in this class that you will also learn how to read financial statement. I mean, when you pick financial statement without doing any ratio analysis, it will start speaking to you. And this is one of the skill that you will learn in this class. And thereby, after this class, you will you anywhere you find yourself, you must be confident enough to pick any financial report, any financial statement, and talk about it, even without doing any ratio analysis. You'll be able to talk about that statement. Okay, then you start your analytical work. So you must have practiced this process over and over again before the exam. You must have practiced this over and over again before the exam. Over and over again before the exam. So lastly before we go tonight, right? So I normally identify the similarities between the between medical doctors and chartered accountants. And I mean chartered accountant in the sense of case study exam. Okay. So what we'll be doing in the case study exam is very similar to how the medical doctors operate, how they function, how they provide their services. Okay, so their subjects, they have the same subject, the patient, human being, and the business. And you remember we learned in business law that businesses are also artificial human beings, right? So they have a very similar patient. It means the patient can die. Once a doctor makes a mistake, the patient will die. Once the business issues are not well sorted out, once they are not attended to, it could lead to the death of any business. Once the business, once any patient's health is not attended to, the patient could die. So you can see that the subjects are similar. Then the next stage is after a patient comes to a medical doctor, the doctor takes the patient through a process known as diagnosis. And it is this is the stage whereby the medical doctor will try to look at the history of the patient in order to understand the present condition of the patient. So the doctor will usually ask questions such as, do you have any of your family, maybe your grandparents, that have suffered this kind of issue before in the past? Do you have any of your family that have suffered it before? Maybe stroke, maybe hypertension, maybe diabetes. So if you say yes, so you will say, okay, maybe that's why you are also experiencing diabetes or something or similar symptoms. Okay. But the thing is that the doctor will not conclude that is the issue or that is the reason for that issue. Right? For us to, we have the history of the business, we have the financial statement which shows the financial performance over the years. We'll be given the history of the business, the background of the business. All of this information will give us an idea of where the business is coming from and why it is experiencing the issues it is experiencing at the moment. Then the next thing is that the medical doctor will subject the student to to medical tests. We are going to do blood test, X-ray, MRI, and so lots of tests like that. But we will not do tests. We also do tests, but our tests could be in form of financial analysis. We could do computation of ratios. We could do audit. We could check internal control and all that in order to identify the issues, what is causing the issue, you know, that the business is facing. Then the next thing is interpretation of result. So the patient will bring the result back to the doctor. Bring the result back to the doctor. The doctor will now look at it and interpret it as, oh, looking by this result, the result becomes the evidence. Looking by this result, you don't have diabetes. So it is just you just have something, maybe head. The result will show that this is what you are going through. This is your issue and all that. So it is from the analysis, from the ratios that we have computed, that we can interpret in order to identify the issues that the business is going through. Is it a liquidity issue, profitability issue? Maybe the business is in a financial distress and all that. Then we also make conclusion. We make conclusion on the diagnosis. We make conclusion that this is the main issue. This is what is causing this issue. And the doctor prescribe medications in order to cure the ailments of the patient. But we cannot prepare medication, but we can advise the business by making what recommendation. And this process I've just described here is everything we'll be doing in this class. I mean, this is just like an overview of what we'll be doing in this class. So thank you for your time. This is all I have for you this night. Okay, you can take the rest of the night to rest. However, I would like to apologize for the situation of the lecture today. The power situation in the country is very bad, and there's no even fuel. So I was running around to get fuel. I could not find one, right? So I had to find a way. I don't want us to miss the second. I mean, we missed last week. I don't want us to miss it today, and that is why you can hear no, I'm in a public space, right? I just have to find a way to hold this lecture. So I'm very sorry for any inconvenience and whatever you feel about the lecture. I'm very sorry, and I hope the situation of the power and fuel in the country will improve before the next class by the grace of God. Okay, okay. Do you have any question for me before we close tonight? Any question? You can unmute yourself. Any question before we close? Robbie, Yusuf, Eniola, Anthony. Any question?
No question.
No question. No question. What about others? Please ask me a question. No. And please, this class is meant to be a very interactive class. So maybe in the next classes, in the next, the subsequent classes we'll be having, there'll be chance for you to interact and contribute. By doing so, it means you must have thought about what you want to say before you say it. Thinking is the first stage in writing. You don't just write; you think before you write. So by thinking and saying, it helps you start developing your writing skill. Okay, you start developing your writing skill. So if you do not have any question for me, I mean we are always open. Our platform is there. You can always ask your questions anytime, any day. I understand that this first class you might not have anything to add, but you can always ask your questions there, right? So thank you for your time this night. I hope to see you next week by the grace of God. Okay. Okay, good night everyone.